everyone, it's Robin May, life coach and licensed therapist and the founder of the I Believe in Marriage Network. And y'all, I am so ready to talk about Blackish. Again, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. If you have not watched Blackish, you do not want to watch this Facebook Live yet. Make a note in your phone, on your laptop to come back to this video. But if you haven't watched it, I don't want to spoil it for you. Listen, I have never done this before. I Believe in Marriage has been going for at least 8 to 10 years. And I don't think I've actually ever done a Facebook Live on the topic of a sitcom. But when I tell you, I don't know that there has been another sitcom that I have watched that has tackled the heart of marriage in such a powerful way as the creator of Blackish did and his writers. Now, you know I am a little bit biased because he did matriculate through the Clark Atlanta University, my alma mater, but he and the writers have done an amazing job at capturing the nuances and the heart of marriage. And I believe that there are 7, yes, I said it, 7. I believe that there are 7 lessons that we can learn from the Blackish episodes. There have been 3 episodes so far, and I heard through the grapevine, I don't know if this grapevine is right, but I heard through the grapevine that there are a total of 4 episodes that deal with this topic. I have no idea how they're going to wrap it up. I have no idea. I cannot wait to see. But so far, these 3 episodes, I believe that there are 7 lessons that we can learn. And I'm ready to dive into those lessons. But first, y'all know that whenever I am sharing on Facebook Live or in person, I have something to share with you that can take our conversation to the next level. So I would love for you to go right on over to ibelieveinmarriage.com/roommate zone. Yes, I have declared that 2018 is the no roommate zone for marriages that are connected to the I Believe in Marriage Network. And so I am doing our webinar again. We had such an amazing response. I've decided to do a pop-up webinar to deal with the idea of getting out of the roommate zone. So go to ibelieveinmarriage.com/roommate zone to sign up. It is next Thursday. You don't want to miss it. Okay, so again, there are 7 lessons, but before I dive into those 7 lessons, I want to share 3 overarching principles that I believe will help. And one of them is a question that since these episodes have been airing, I have probably had at least 10 people to inbox me, to text me, to call me, and ask me my opinion about a certain part of the show. And so I'm going to share my professional opinion on a particular topic, okay? So again, what we're going to do is I'm going to share 3 overarching principles, and then I'm going to share 7 lessons. And I'm going to go through the lessons quickly, and then I want you guys to give me some feedback. Even after this Facebook Live is over, I'm going to be checking back in, and I want to dialogue with you. I want us to have a conversation. Let's really dive into this topic, okay? So one of the first things I really want you guys to remember is that you do not know how your spouse experiences you in the marriage. You do not know how your spouse experiences you in your marriage. Listen, you cannot grade your own paper. I say that all the time. When it comes to whether you are meeting the needs of your spouse, when it comes to whether your spouse is being satisfied in the marriage, you can't grade your own paper. You can't tell your spouse, listen, I don't care what you say, I'm taking care of your needs. How ridiculous does that sound? So you don't know how your spouse is experiencing you in the marriage. We all have blind spots. That happens in our career. That happens with our platonic relationships. That happens with our children. We have blind spots. We don't know some of the stuff about us. If I had a black spot on my forehead right here and we're having a conversation, I won't know unless you say, hey, Robin, girl, you got something on your head. Or say, girl, go look in the mirror. That's what often happens in our relationships. We don't know how our spouse is experiencing us. So if I tie it into Blackish, Bo doesn't know how her husband is experiencing her and vice versa. And so I want you to take a moment and give your spouse a break because, boo, you ain't as easy to live with as you thought. You're not as easy to live with as you might have thought you were. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through these 7 lessons. You don't know how your spouse is experiencing you in the marriage, and you got some stuff that's impacting your marriage. All right. Number 2, these overarching principles that I wanted to share. They both said in the conversation in Blackish, the couple, they both said something. When I tell you, I hear it all the time in my counseling office. I hear it all the time with my coaching, the couples that I coach. I hear it all the time. And honestly, every single time I hear it, I'm like, yeah, exactly. So let me tell you what the statement is. You and I see the world totally different. Robin, my husband and I, we just see the world different. Or my wife and I, we just don't see the world the same. And what I normally say, as clinically and as sensitively as possible, is duh. And I'm being lighthearted here just to take off some of the pressure, because I understand marriage is intense, or it can be. It is super, super challenging, or it can be. But it can also be amazing and inspiring. And you can be married to your best friend and you guys can build a life together. And so I want you to know that absolutely you see life one way and your spouse sees life a different way. Because more than likely, I hope, you guys weren't raised in the same home. Listen, if you guys were raised in the same home, that's a whole nother issue. We need to talk offline, okay? So you and your spouse were raised in 2 different homes. You know, I have an older sister who is 8 years older than me. And we were born in the same family, raised in the same home. We have the same mama. We have the same daddy. But we often look at our childhood, we look at our life story, we are completely different in so many ways. And we often are astonished at how different 2 sisters who were raised by the same parents in the same home can view life so differently, can look at situations so differently. We can look at the same childhood and see it so differently. And we were raised in the same home. So of course, you and your spouse was born and raised. My husband was born in California. He lived in 8 different cities before he landed in Atlanta. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. I went to the same school from pre-K through the 8th grade, then the same school from the 9th through the 12th grade. My parents lived in one home my entire life. So you imagine you have these 2 people, this man who knows what it's like to pack up your home and move several times, who has no problem with change, who knows how to adjust to different circumstances. And then you have good old me, who feels like, no, let's keep everything the same. Let's not rock the boat. We got to move. No. Let's just stay right where we are. So yes, you and your spouse can often see the world totally different. But can I help you with that? Lean in. God never intended for you to marry you. God never intended for you to stand at that altar and marry you. Absolutely. You and your spouse see the world differently, and those 2 different perspectives, those 2 different viewpoints can merge together to balance one another out, because there are some things about your spouse, the way your spouse sees things, that you need. And there's some things, the way you see things, that your spouse needs. Now, let me say this, because I understand the heart of it. Absolutely. We need, in order for us to be compatible, in order for us to live life together, in order for us to raise children on one accord, we do need to have some common values. So absolutely, our core values, what makes us tick, our core values should have some similarities. That's why the Bible talks about making sure that you are equally yoked. And so absolutely there is importance of us having core values. But can I tell you what's so interesting about that? You and your spouse can have the same core values, but how you live those values out can be totally different. So my husband and I have a core value that our children should be protected, and that we should cover them, and that we should raise them in the fear of the Lord. but how that looks for Lee is sometimes very different than how that looks for me. And so I have got to learn how to lean on his perspective, and he's got to learn how to lean on my perspective, and we've got to learn how to blend those values together. Okay? So, remember I told you I was going to share 3 principles and then the 7 lessons. I'm going to get through them pretty quickly. So the first principle is, remember, you don't know how your spouse is experiencing you in the marriage. You're not as easy to live with as you thought. Absolutely, you have some blind spots, and so you don't get to grade your own paper when it comes to your marriage. And then number 2, absolutely, you and your spouse can very well see the world very differently. We want you to have, or I want you to have some commonalities when it comes to your values. I want the 2 of you to figure out what are those areas that we really agree upon, because that's probably where God is going to use us powerfully as a couple. But don't get so stressed out when you and your spouse can look at something and see it differently. I want you to consider, how can I shift my perspective so that I can learn from my spouse? And how can my spouse shift his or her perspective to learn from me? All right, and here's the third thing. I told you that I've probably gotten 10 requests to share my perspective on it. And I am being a little careful about sharing my perspective on this. So I'm going to keep it very high level, okay? So in the show Blackish, again, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, turn off, okay? So in the show Blackish, we're 3 episodes in. Bo and her husband separate, okay? And they said, we need some space. We're going to separate. They're trying the nesting approach. And so I've been asked several times, Robin, what is your view on separation? Like, do you think that works? And I'm being very careful about sharing my perspective because I'm coming from a professional point of view as I'm licensed therapist and a certified life coach. Let me be very clear. I'm not your therapist. So do not take this wisdom and say, my therapist Robin told me. No. Because if you were my client, we'd be sitting in my office and I would walk you through this, okay? So my perspective on separation is that in their situation, they jump to separation really quickly. I believe that we should not live on Isolation Island. When you are ready to move up in your career, you get some wisdom from those who are where you want to be. When you're trying to decide if you want to get an advanced degree, you're going to talk to people who have gotten a degree in that area. If you're trying to figure out a challenge that you're having with your children, you're going to talk to somebody who you've seen raise children in a way that you respect and honor. So I believe in their situation, they jump to separation really quickly. I will tell you that I have walked couples through a therapeutic separation. I believe that there is going to be a separation. If you're trying a separation to see if you can restore the marriage, I do not believe that you can do a separation as successfully as you may want to by yourself. I strongly believe in wise counsel. I don't believe anybody can tell you what to do for your marriage. Let me repeat that. I don't believe anybody can tell you what you need to do for your marriage. But I do believe in wise counsel. Why? Because that's what the Bible says. The Bible says that there is wisdom in a multitude of counsel. So I believe that they jump to separation really quickly. Again, y'all, this is just a TV show. Let's be clear. This is just a TV show. The reason why I'm even doing this conversation is because this TV show highlighted the nuances of marriage in a way that I have never seen. It is so powerful, and I believe it could spark a really, really good conversation for couples to figure out how to navigate the terrains of marriage. So I'm just using this as a jump off for a conversation, okay? It's just a TV show. But again, I believe they jump to separation really quickly, and I think they're doing separation by themselves, and they aren't, at this point of the show, aren't being supported along the way consistently. There's some things, if you go to separation, that need to be in place. What is our understanding? What is our restoration process? How does this impact the children? Again, I believe separation is the last ditch effort. Like, Robin, we're getting ready to sign the papers. We're getting ready to sign the papers. I'll say, okay, is there anything else? Have we tried everything? Okay. And so that's my view on that. Okay. So let's dive into the 7 lessons I believe that we can get from this show, Blackish. And then if you have any questions, make sure you're posting them and I will make sure that I try to answer them even after this Facebook Live is over. I'm going to be back on here because I want to hear your perspective. Okay. All right. Here's 7 lessons. Here's the first one. From the show Blackish, what we saw is that it is so important that you and your spouse tune in before one of you or both of you clock out. It is so important that you tune in to your marriage before one or both of you clock out. What do I mean by that? In marriage, you have to pay attention to the subtle shifts in your marriage. Remember, I said that I am hosting the Avoiding the Roommate Zone webinar once again. Go to IBelieveInMarriage.com/roommate zone. And in that webinar, I teach you how to identify the roommate zone and what you need to do to stay out and get out and stay out of the roommate zone. Well, part of that is that you have to pay attention to the subtle shifts that happen in your marriage. And let me tell you, I want you to pause for a moment and I want you to think of your couple. What is that? We all have them. We all have that couple, whether it's someone that's far off that we have watched from afar, or it's somebody that we know very personally. Maybe it's your parents. Maybe it's your grandparents. Maybe it's Barack and Michelle. Maybe it is for you. Maybe it's Beyonce and Jay-Z. I don't know who your couple is, but I want you to think about your couple. That couple that you've looked at and said, they seem to really have it together. They've been through some things. They've overcome. I want you to think of that couple. And that couple has some stuff. There's no such thing as a couple that doesn't have some stuff that impacts their marriage. And so you and your spouse have to tune in to the nuances of your marriage before one of you clocks out. And you can clock out without ever leaving the house. You can clock out without ever saying a word. You can clock out and your spouse just be oblivious. So I want you and your spouse to tune in before one or both of you clocks out. You have to pay attention to the subtle shifts in your marriage. What are the things that's letting you know, wait, hold on, we're not doing too good. We're not in a good space. How do you pay attention to that? How do you listen to that? How do you keep the heartbeat of your marriage close? So we're talking about the lessons that all of us can learn from Blackish. They weren't tuning in. So listen, what happens is you can get all the way out where you're drowning, and by the time you're drowning, it's panic time. But if you had caught it beforehand, we could have pulled you out before you got to the point of drowning. So I want you and your spouse to tune in before one or both of you clock out. Here's the second lesson that we can learn. We have to consistently clean our filter. Let me tell you what I mean about this filter. This filter can be a game changer in your marriage. Listen, as you're logging on, make sure you are sharing this video. I have 7 lessons that I am going to share with you from the show Blackish, these last 3 episodes on marriage. So share the video and tell your friends this is must watch Facebook, okay? So here's the second lesson. Consistently clean your filter. Y'all, this filter, like I said, is a game changer. If you can understand the concept of the filter, it can change how you engage with your spouse. Listen, we have a filter in every interaction we have with anyone. You can be talking to a really good friend. You guys, this just happened just today for me about 2 hours ago. My sister, who is like one of my best friends, that's my girl. My sister called me and she said, "What are you doing?" And I responded, and I didn't like her response. She didn't like my response. And we just got completely annoyed with one another and said, "You know what? I'm going to let you go." And when I thought about it, my sister said something that was triggering something in me. She didn't even know. I was in my feelings about something else. She said the wrong thing. It triggered me. So then I responded to her a certain way because of my filter. Well, it happens in every relationship. But think about it. You and your spouse are living in the same house day after day after day after day, month after month after month after month. And over time, your filter, the way you see things, the way you process things can get filled with a whole lot of junk. And if you don't take time to make sure you're cleaning that filter, how do you clean the filter? Well, you make sure you do things like saying, "Hey, babe, when you said that, for some reason," don't accuse them. "Hey, babe, when you said that, it kind of made me feel some kind of way. I'm sure you didn't mean it, but this is kind of what I heard." Make sure that you're taking time to adjust how you are hearing what your spouse is saying. Say to your spouse, "Hey, honey, the other day I asked you to do X, Y, and Z. I don't know if you really understood what I meant. Can we talk about that again?" Make sure that you're doing that work, because if you don't, minor irritations can become major issues. So again, spoiler alert, talking about the show, the couple went out to dinner, and Bo got so annoyed with her husband with the way he was ordering food. He was just ordering. He kept being indecisive, and she got really annoyed with that. Well, that's something minor. But over time, if you're not cleaning your filter, little bitty things begin to annoy you more and more and more. So if you and your spouse are not taking time to clean the filter, then you are finding yourself agitated about everything. When I talk about the Avoiding the Roommate Zone webinar, in that webinar, I share that I can tell when my husband and I are headed into the roommate zone. I can tell because little things really begin to annoy me. So sometimes my husband has this very annoying cough. Drives me crazy. And so I can tell when we are headed into the roommate zone because he can cough and I'm like, you can't get a cough drop? It's a little thing that becomes, and so then now he's annoyed. I can't cough in my own house, Robin? Is that what you're saying? I can't cough in my own house. So little things become major issues. So make sure you're cleaning your filter. Here's lesson number 3. And this is serious. Whatever you don't nurture will die. Whatever you don't nurture will die. I wish I could run over there real quick and get this little flower that my daughter, this ivy that my daughter planted for Mother's Day. Listen, if we don't nurture that flower, if we don't nurture that, if we don't make sure that we're tending to it, then it will eventually die. Whatever you don't nurture will die. So I have a question for you. I want you to really answer this question. You don't have to share it on the Facebook Live. I just want you to take some time and personally answer this question. How do you and your spouse consistently and intentionally nurture your relationship? I want you to take some time and answer that. How do you and your spouse intentionally and consistently nurture your relationship? What happens in marriage is that we unintentionally place our marriage on the back burner. We place our marriage on the back burner and everything else takes priority over our relationship. So what do you and your spouse do to intentionally and consistently nurture your relationship? Because whatever you don't nurture will die. Okay, if you're just now joining us, I am sharing with you the 7 lessons that we have learned so far in Blackish. I don't know that I've ever done this before, but they have done an amazing job of dealing with the nuances of marriage. It has been a powerful three-part episode so far. I heard through the grapevine there are only going to be 4 episodes to deal with this topic. I don't even know if that's true, but so far we have seen 3 episodes. And so I'm just kind of sharing with you the lessons that I believe that we can take from Blackish. So let me recap. The first lesson was tune in before one or both of you clock out. Consistently clean your filter. What you don't nurture will die. And let me say this one real quick. This is just a bonus one. This is not in the 7. But what often happens, y'all, if we're not careful, for those of us who are in a good space, if you're in a good space in your marriage, what could easily happen is that you think, oh, we good. We good. I don't have to worry about any of that. But that is the most dangerous place, one of the most dangerous places you can be in your marriage, because marriage ebbs and flows. And so you got to make sure that you're doing the work in advance to protect your marriage from the little things that can begin to destroy it. All right, so here is lesson number 4. Lean in again. Lean in with me one more time. Protect your marriage from those who don't respect marriage. Protect your marriage from those who don't even respect the institution of marriage. Listen, again, spoiler alert, talking about the show, you got to be careful if you're sharing with your friends, hey, my spouse and I are, we're doing some things to work on our marriage, and you are around people who are saying marriage therapy does not work. Why? You're going to counseling? Who does that? You got to make sure that you are around people, or people that you share with, if you're going to share, who respect the institution of marriage, who are spiritually sensitive, who believe in you and your forever, who want to help you fight for your I do. You want to make sure that you're not talking to folks who are dismissive and disrespectful of marriage. Listen, during the episode, I laughed out loud when one of the coworkers said, y'all gonna be in trouble if you start doing some schedules. So you are really in trouble if you have to schedule sex. Can I tell you, I literally screamed out loud because trust and believe, in my counseling office, I encourage couples, schedule it. You know why I do? Because there are too many people who are not having it. So I would prefer for you to schedule it so that you can have it, okay? And the reason why I say that, because life can be demanding and you can have so many things pulling at your schedule. If you and your spouse know Thursday night, Sunday night, whenever it's going to be, Tuesday morning, whatever it's going to be, it doesn't all have to be scheduled. This is just a bonus. All of your intimacy does not have to be scheduled, nor should it be. All of your intimacy should not be scheduled. But if you and your spouse ain't having consistent sex, you better put it on the schedule. You schedule your hair appointment. You schedule the appointment to talk to your boss. You schedule what time somebody gonna come and clean the house. You schedule when you're gonna take your car to get an oil change. And if you and your spouse are not consistently intimate, you better put it on the schedule. Okay, that was just a bonus. All right, so that was number 4. Protect your marriage from folks who don't respect marriage. Here's lesson number 5. When you assume the worst, you experience the worst. In your marriage, if you towards your spouse, if you assume the worst about your spouse, you're going to experience the worst. And so what I want to encourage you to do is to give your spouse the benefit of the doubt. What we saw in the nuances with the couple was that they were just assuming the worst about their spouse's perspective. They were assuming the worst about what their spouse meant in a situation. They were assuming the worst about stuff that had happened a long time ago. But if you assume the worst, you're going to experience the worst. And most of the time in my work with couples, I find myself constantly saying, but what if she didn't mean it in that way? What if that wasn't his intention? Did you consider that maybe you're reading that situation wrong? Listen, I don't know. I tell them all the time, that's your man. That's your woman. You know them way more than I do. But just what? What if you're assuming the worst? And the reason why I know that this is a powerful principle, because we want people to give us the benefit of the doubt. I want my husband to give me the benefit of the doubt. I don't want him to automatically assume that I'm trying to do something to harm him. I don't want him to automatically assume that I'm trying to come at him. I don't want him to automatically assume that I'm out to get him. I want him to give me the benefit of the doubt. So why don't I do the same for him? All right, lesson number 6. Pick your battles carefully, but that doesn't mean that you ignore all the battles. So what we found in this Blackish episodes, this kind of ties to my previous point. What we found is they were bringing up stuff that happened. They're married 20 years. They were bringing up stuff that happened when they were in year 5, but they never dealt with it. They just kind of brushed it under the rug. So here we are 20 years later or 15 years later, and those things are still impacting us. And so what happens is most of us have been taught to pick your battles, and you should. Everything shouldn't be a big issue. But we can't go so far as that we never deal with anything. So if your spouse has done something and it kind of hurt your feelings or it made you feel some kind of way, take some time to self-reflect. See if you can just kind of let it go, because you're going to give the benefit of the doubt. If you can't let it go, then say, babe, that just, when you did that, it kind of made me feel this way. So that you're not carrying things for 20 years in your marriage. Imagine you got stuff that happened from year 1. And you good. You put some stuff in your bag from year 4. You're good. You put some stuff in your bag from year 8. Now this bag is getting a little heavy. Now I'm putting stuff in my bag from year 10. So here we are at year 16, and this bag is about to take me out. Erykah Badu, bag lady. This bag is about to take me out because I'm carrying all this stuff because I never was courageous enough to bring it to you. So pick your battles carefully, but that doesn't mean you ignore all the battles, because if you don't, you'll be making little digs like we saw in the Blackish episodes. You'll make little digs that eventually get annoying. One of the things I tell couples often is that it's the little foxes, the scripture says, that destroys the vine. And what I have found is that, yes, the big things, quote unquote, infidelity, inconsistencies, lies, those kind of things. The big things bring people into counseling, but it's also the little things over time that begin to eat at the foundation of your marriage. So those little bitty digs that we make just to say little things to get at you, that begins to eat at the foundation of your marriage. Then the next thing you know, you're disgusted, irritated, don't want to have anything to do with them, or they don't want to have anything to do with you. They don't even want to talk to you because every time they talk to you, you're saying something sarcastic or you're saying something that's a dig, and it's just y'all are doing this. Because remember, everything in marriage either brings us closer together or pulls us further apart. So those little digs that we make are just doing this over time. We might brush it off. We might laugh it off. Oh, there he go again. There she goes again. But after a while, especially if we're not cleaning our filter, lesson number 2, if we're not cleaning our filter over time, that just gets bigger, bigger, and bigger. All right, here's lesson number 7. There were 7 lessons I believe that we could get from these Blackish episodes. Here's lesson number 7. Make sure, this is simple, make sure you are engaged in one another's life. Bo went back to work and her husband didn't even know it. Make sure you are engaged in one another's life. How do you make sure you know what is weighing on your husband at work? How do you make sure you know the big decision that your wife has to make for her career? How do you make sure that you know what's going on with your wife's family? What's going on with your husband's brother that you know he loves so much? How are you making sure that you're engaged, that you have turned towards one another, that you're not living what I'm going to talk about on the webinar, that you're not living parallel lives, but you're living intertwined lives? Many couples I work with are just living parallel lives. They're living in the same home, taking care of the nuances of home, but they're not living in life together. So make sure you are intertwined and engaged in one another's life. All right, guys, those were the 7 lessons. I'm going to give them to you again. But in the meantime, make sure you go over to IBelieveInMarriage.com/roommate zone. Yes, I am doing the webinar again. It was such a great response. I want to make sure I give you guys another opportunity for you and your spouse to learn what it takes to get out and stay out of the roommate zone. The webinar is really, really practical. And if you show up live on the webinar, if you show up live, not listen to the replay, but if you show up live, I will give you the toolkit that I give to the couples to help them know how to build their relationship in a way that protects them from the roommate zone. You'll get that live and in your hands. All right. So here are the 7 lessons. Number 1, tune in before you both clock out. Number 2, consistently clean your filter. Number 3, what you don't nurture dies. Number 4, protect your marriage from folks who don't believe in marriage. Number 5, when you assume the worst, you're going to experience the worst. Number 6, pick your battles carefully, but that doesn't mean that you ignore all the battles. And then number 7, make sure you are engaged in one another's life. All right, guys, so those are the lessons that I have learned or that I captured from the Blackish episodes. I really, really enjoyed the last 3 episodes. Well, I'm not going to say I enjoyed them because it was very intense, but I believe it was a perfect description or depiction of what begins to happen in our marriages. All right, let's continue to dialogue about it. Before I log off, does anybody have any questions for me? Is there anything that you're saying, Robin, I need your input on this, or what did you think about this? And if you don't have any questions now, no worries. I'm going to keep coming back to this Facebook Live so that we can continue to dialogue about it. So if you are just now logging on, share it. Share it with your family and friends and say, you got to watch this Facebook Live. And remember, I'm going to keep coming back and forth. So I'm going to give a few minutes. Do you guys have any questions for me? Hey, Brenda, I see you. Hey, my soror, Renita, I see you, girl. I miss you. Hey, Sharon, it's really good to see you. Some names went by already. I don't see those. All right, guys, if you don't have any questions, I will just ask you to share this video. Make sure you sign up for the webinar, IBelieveInMarriage.com/roommate zone. And until then, I'll see you next time.